Adult Education. I'm Dale Sorensen, welcoming you this morning. We have 1 hour less than normal today. To be truthful, there's only one doctor I know who has a following like John Lurain's. I didn't know doctors could have the kind of relationships with patients that he has. And I first discovered this when he and I went out golfing one day. And I'm going to guess some of you are golfers. You go to the first tee and you have to show that you paid. So we gave him a receipt and our names are on there, and we get ready to tee off. That person, often called a ranger, comes up. So we give him our receipt, we're getting ready to tee off, and he comes running up to us. And he says, "Are you the Dr. John Lurain?" And he said, "You saved my wife's life." Aww. But he literally came running. I said, so it's been, for me, and I've seen other examples like this of John's patients and the testimonies they give. In other ways, he's just a bit like some of us. He grew up in a very small town in northern Illinois. He went to Oberlin. He found a lass that he courted and eventually married. He then went to the University of North Carolina to earn his medical degree. Eventually came back to Chicago to become a medical practitioner and professor at the Northwestern University School of Medicine. For several decades, he healed patients as an oncologist and surgeon. He conducted research, trained new doctors, and produced hundreds of publications. John and his wife raised 2 daughters. By the time everyone concluded their education in that family, there were 4 scientists with doctoral degrees. In our golf foursome, he invariably hits the ball farther and takes fewer strokes than the rest of us. He devours novels. He attends cultural events and he travels the world regularly. And during his diverse life, he shared his talents with his church. So it's fun to be up here this morning, introducing John. His trademark is his smile.
Dale, you're too nice. Some of that was true, actually. So, when I was asked to do this, I didn't know exactly what I was supposed to do. But I came up with this idea of my faith journey. And what I wanted to do, when I started thinking about it, I sort of thought that I could break it down into a few different areas. The origins, spirituality, listening as an act of faith, teaching, and my life's calling. So I was raised in a small town. The sign outside said 900 in the rural Midwest, very conservative town. There was one Democrat in town, I'm pretty sure, and that was the history teacher. That was, I think, it. I attended the Methodist church. I was the only person in my family who attended regularly. I went through Sunday school, I was confirmed, and had a good time in Methodist Youth Fellowship. I have to admit, most of the activities I enjoyed were the socializing with my friends at church. But I was interested in the gospel stories and some of the Christian values that I took from that experience. When I went to Oberlin College, I started attending the Congregational Church, which is the historic church on campus that was originally founded in 1833 when the college was founded. Very activist church, was very active in the abolitionist movement. It was, Oberlin was on the Underground Railroad at the time. But mostly I went because it was a chance just to respite from studying. And it gave me a chance to think about something else during that time. And during this time at Oberlin, associated with the church, I developed my worldview, cultural awareness, celebration of diversity and individual talents, and the importance of just showing up and making a contribution. And these were things that I really hadn't considered before I got into college. When my wife Nell and I moved to Oak Park in 1979, for me to start my job as an academic gynecologic oncologist at Northwestern University Medical School, we looked for a fairly liberal, community-oriented church and joined First United in 1980. We raised our 2 daughters in the church. They went through a nursery school program. And one of my youngest was also married here at First United. We've always felt comfortable worshiping First United, contributing to the church's missions, and serving the greater Oak Park community. I was thinking about spirituality, and it's hard to define. I think the way I define it is spirituality is how we experience ourselves in relationship to what we designate as the source of ultimate power and meaning in life, and how we live out this relationship. Being spiritual is very natural, a way of being human. Everyone has some view of life and how the universe works. Therefore, everyone has spirituality, even if this is the word that we use to describe this view. Getting in touch with our spirituality becomes the foundation upon which we discover and forge our values and ideas, which in turn shapes our choices and commitments and cultivates gratitude. In short, again, it's how we show up in life. Spirituality especially helps provide a path to finding or discovering meaning when we're faced with disease or death. In my career as an oncologist, I found that spirituality played a major role in patient decision-making and well-being. Illness itself is a spiritual experience. Patients with serious illnesses such as cancer often relied on spirituality or religion to help them cope with and find meaning in their disease and suffering. And they wanted their spiritual needs addressed by their medical team. So medical care providers need to approach their work with a core spiritual calling, transcending the technical realities of the disease and caring for patients in a holistic fashion. As an oncologist, I was often confronted with questions of meaning, value, and relationships posed by illness. I think the hope that there is meaning beyond the disease and pain and distress, i.e. spirituality, permitted me to continue this important task of caring for these patients who had advanced disease and some of whom were dying. My wife, Nell, was faced with a diagnosis of incurable cancer in 2021. She found a spiritual peace and meaning in her life principally through her family, her career as a scientist and teacher, as well as her religion. I know that she was comforted by her spirituality when she was dying. I also received solace through my spirituality, knowing that I had 56 years of wonderful memories of Nell. I find that I'm channeling my inner Nell every day, and I'm grateful for it. Nell was my hero. So I also started thinking about listening as an act of faith. There are multiple examples of acts of faith, listening as acts of faith in the Bible. In Mark, Jesus says, pay attention to what you hear, and still more will be added to you. In Romans, the text reads, faith comes from hearing. In Galatians, Paul admonishes, he who supplies the Spirit to you and works miracles among you does so by hearing with faith. Listening serves as a central faith practice, training ourselves to recognize God's voice in others, being present in the moment, and setting aside distractions that keep us from listening and responding to God's presence around us is an act of faith. I think we're finding some of that in our small groups that we've been in our little circles that we're coming into contact with. When we listen as a faith practice, we're not only listening to the Holy Spirit directly, but also to God speaking to us through attentiveness to other people. We have the opportunity to see and encounter God in each person we meet. In Scripture, Jesus often invites us to experience God's presence, love, and character through other people. Listening to another person leads to a mutual experience of extending or receiving God's promise within one another. As we learn to be a listening presence, we hope to enhance our love of God and love of others and become more spiritually connected to those around us. In my career as a physician and oncologist, patients often brought God into the examining room or in the hospital room. I found that my greatest act of faith was being a listening presence. Not having anything directly related to religion, I gave them space to grieve and verbalize their fears and needs. In so doing, I really believed that we were actually sharing their feelings with God and trying to make sense of their place in the world and how their illness fit into that place. The other thing I thought about when I was thinking about this presentation was teaching. During my 40 years of as an academic oncologist at Northwestern, I provided surgical and medical care to women with gynecologic malignancies and did clinical research, as Dale pointed out. But the part of my job that I liked the best and found to be the most rewarding was teaching medical students, residents, and fellows. I always felt that I could have the greatest impact on the future of medicine by influence young trainees, improve medical care, and inspire them to become teachers as well. After retirement in 2019, I was blessed with the opportunity to continue my teaching commitment by getting involved as both a tutor and board member in Learning Edge Tutoring, formerly Cluster Tutoring program, which is supported by First United Church. This program provides free one-to-one tutoring and academic enrichment opportunities to over 100 Chicago area K through 12 students who live in underserved communities. Its mission is to help young people realize their potential through the power of learning. I grew up in a household of teachers and have seen firsthand the value and joy of learning. I firmly believe that one person can make a difference in another person's life, and I see this happening at Learning Edge. The Scottish theologian James Stewart noted that Jesus' teaching had a power and effect with which the influence of no other teacher can even for a moment be compared. Jesus was a master teacher. He is called teacher or rabbi over 40 times in the 4 Gospels of the Bible. Jesus' ultimate command, as noted in the King James Version of Matthew, was, "Go ye into the world and teach." I hope that in some small way I've followed Jesus' command and made a difference in the world through teaching. So the other thing that I came across was Frederick Buechner's quest to uncover life's inner depths. He called life's calling, work, mission, purpose, vocation. Life's calling and work is where, and he defined it as where your greatest joy meets the world's greatest needs, such as justice, hunger, and healing. He said, listen to your life. See it for the fathomless mystery that it is, in the boredom and pain of it, no less than in the excitement and gladness. Touch, taste, smell your way to the holy and hidden part of it. Because in the last analysis, all moments are key moments, and life itself is grace. So Buechner's concept of finding one's purpose was to set out goals and follow those goals through good times and bad, to be directed in positive ways, to seek one's true identity in life. Buechner's vocation was to experience the fullness of life. Of death, he wrote, what's lost is nothing to what's found. And all the death that ever was, set next to life, would scarcely fill a cup. So I started thinking about how my life's purpose sort of fell into these categories. Spirituality obviously has been an important part of both my work and personal life, enabling me to be more centered, more grounded, more forgiving, and essentially more human. I've tried to be a better listener to my patients, colleagues, and friends so that I can become more spiritually connected to those around me. I thank Jesus, the greatest teacher of all, who in part has inspired me to be a better teacher in lifelong learning. And I thank God for being with me as I've discerned my life's work and as I navigate the rest of my life. That's sort of a short summary of my life and my life's purpose and my faith journey. And you know, I didn't want to spend too much time belaboring some of these points, but that's basically all I have. I'm happy to answer any questions that you may have, but it's pretty short and succinct. Janet?
Do you have any, if you could share ideas with us of people that you've worked with who were dying of cancer? Like positive stories, negative stories, just in between?
Yeah, I think that one of the...
repeat the question?
Yeah, so Janet asked if I could share some stories about people who I contacted with who were dying. You know, I can tell you that one of the things I encountered is that people who were happy with their lives and felt that they had a good life and whatever they accomplished in life, were pretty understood about dying, and they were pretty at peace with it, and their families were connected with it. They talked to their families about this. Whereas patients who had not come to thinking about the value of their lives, the dying process, or hadn't discussed this with their families very much, the dying process was very chaotic. Didn't go well. And it didn't have a lot to do with so-called religion. Some of the patients who thought they were very religious, they just couldn't understand why God was letting this happen to them. The people who were spiritually connected understood this in a more holistic way. Yeah. So, the patients and the families were going nuts, you know. There has to be something that you can do for mama. And there isn't, you know, other than, you know, just palliative care and comfort care. But they just didn't understand this. In my own wife's, we understood that she'd had a wonderful life. She affected so many people with her life as a teacher, mother, wife. That she really was my hero. You know, she and my daughters understand that she had just a wonderful life, and those bring up memories. You know, I know we all, some of us who have lost spouses here can understand that. On the other hand, patients, yeah. So I think dying is it's not a pleasant thing for anybody, but I think that patients who feel spiritually connected, have value, feel that they've had value for their lives, do a lot better in situations.
Were there early life models or others for you in terms of spiritual development from family or others, as well as for you to go into medicine? Where did you get the calling to medicine? There are two questions.
Okay, so the calling for medicine, my dad was in college when World War II broke out, and he left college and joined the Navy. And after he got out of the Navy, he finished up college and started medical school. I was born in October, and we had no money. First place I lived, my dad tells a story about how first place I lived, we rented an apartment on the house, the second floor. And my dad said, "Oh," he's looking around. He said, "The bathroom must be downstairs." And she says, "Yes, downstairs and out the back." we had no money, and so my dad dropped out of medical school and became a science teacher his whole career in high school. And there was a lot of pressure for me to go to medical school and become a physician. Thank God I had some aptitude for it, because I would have been miserable otherwise. And it was the right career for me. The really, as far as my Christian values and spirituality, there really wasn't the model that in my home. My brother and my parents weren't very religious or spiritual. As I said, I was the only one that really went to church regularly, and probably mostly for social reasons, but in the process developed some ideas about religion and spirituality. But it was really when I got to college that I started developing my views about life and the meaning of life that was important to me. Yes, sir.
I was wondering if if you saw any difference between younger people who were dying versus those who were older. It seems to me that as I grow older, I have the opportunity and the time and the interest to reflect on my life. Whereas when I was younger, I was just like busy and doing things, and thinking philosophical thoughts were probably not foremost in my mind.
You're out having fun. You're out partying, aren't you?
Well,
No, they feel cheated. They feel cheated that they didn't get the full life experience. I was always surprised. I didn't take care of kids.
right.
I took care of some young adults, a few teenagers. I was always surprised by how at peace they were, though, with the process. You know, they were supported, I think, it depended on their support systems that they had in place from their parents, friends. Yeah, they felt cheated, I think, that they didn't get to experience a full life that other people did. Yes.
My son has had an interesting experience from a workplace friend who's, he thinks healthy. He's married, he has children, this friend from work. But the friend from work's attorney told him to get a death support panel for himself in case something happens to him. And he asked Evan to be on the panel. And it'd be 4 people, and one of them might be tasked with pulling the plug, if it came to that. And he said, I've never heard of anything like this. And he said, I'm really afraid to be a part of it. And I wondered if you'd ever heard of anything like that, where there's a support group, and he's a non-relative.
Yeah, the problem,
Repeat the question.
yeah, the
I'm
question's
sorry,
kind of long,
it was a
but
long question.
is there, when people don't have their own, like, family, or they can find somebody else, or a, quotes, panel to make decisions for them, when they're life decisions. I think most people depend on their families and it's important to have these discussions with your family, and it's important to name someone as your health care power of attorney, the person who will be the ultimate determiner of your health care decisions if you're unable to make them yourselves. Now, it's important that you discuss this with your family ahead of time, or your friends, whoever that what your wishes are, because no matter what, I don't know how many times I've seen this, it's that the kids don't agree about mama, and that's a problem. It causes just incredible chaos, and it actually is very detrimental to their relatives' health and decision making. So I don't know about the panel is going to be is the same thing. There's going to be people who disagree with the way things are going. So I think it's important to have one person that you name as your healthcare power of attorney that understands exactly what you want to have happen. For instance, if I have kidney failure and somebody suggests dialysis, I've already told people that I'm not having that, and my kids understand that. That's just one example. But it's important you have those things in place. It's just, I can't tell you how disruptive it is to the actual patient's care and well-being to have these arguments that occur with regard to decision-making near the end of life.
Yeah, he's very intimidated by the request. The gentleman in question has a wife and a daughter. And
I would recommend he stay out of it.
yeah.
If they have a wife and daughter, then there's he should bow out. Tell them, I think you discuss this with your family,
It was interesting, and it's his lawyer, the
Yeah,
gentleman's lawyer,
yeah,
said, you need this in place. Well, there may be a family dynamic that, is the reason for this, but he said, I've never heard of this. And he said, I'm a non-family member.
I've never heard of this either.
Yeah.
A panel.
Yeah.
It's going to be the same chaos with a panel.
Who's the lawyer?
It's,
You know, John, you've done a great job of giving your experience. Now I'm gonna ask you about the industry. So, the industry. He's in the medical care industry. So, what's your perception of, are we making progress? Are doctors better giving overall care than they were before? Or are we worse? And why? How's that?
Geez. That wasn't a topic of my discussion. But,
It's about care.
it is. So, it's a hard answer. I think that, clearly, there have been advances of medicine so that physicians are able to give better care. Now, it's sometimes less personalized care. And you have been downloading some of this care to non-physician providers, which, you know, they're good, but they're not as well-trained as a physician probably. So that's an issue, but I don't know what.
Well, I was thinking, I probably wasn't careful with it, when I said care, I meant the human, we talked about.
Yeah, the human interaction.
The human interaction.
Yeah, there's clearly less of that, I think, yes. It takes time. Ben knows that, you know, and it takes time to spend time with patients and get to know them and what their wishes are. And there's less and less time as physicians either have time to do that or desire to do that even. They downloaded a lot of that to paramedical personnel. So, yeah, you're right. There's that spirituality that you feel as a physician with a patient, and the listening as an act of faith is, I think, something that isn't, that's less common nowadays than it used to be. Janet?
How has hospice changed? Is it better? No.
It's better. There are more opportunities, there are more organizations that provide hospice care. I think that most hospice, they understand what their role is, that there's no, you know, when Nell was dying, we had hospice services. They would come, you know, once or twice a week, check in with us. I would call them, I said she needs more morphine or whatever. They'd send it over the same day, right, you know, within a few hours. Very accommodating. They had clergy that came. They had a musician who came and played the harp for a while. I thought it was very holistic, good, yeah.
I have a real positive story about that. Well, my best friend, probably, right after we retired, she was only 52, and she wasn't feeling well, and they diagnosed a really rare form of cancer in January, and she was gone by May. But meanwhile, she stayed in her house. She was single. All her brothers and sisters came to visit. One of them was a nurse. She stayed with her. But then the doctor who came, I was there this one time, and what he said to her was, "What would you like me to play?" And she was a wonderful musician, and he went and played her piano and played some song that she really wanted.
Yeah.
It was so lovely. So, a good memory. It was terrible that she died. We had just retired, you know, under that 5+5, remember? Some of you teachers. And so she and I were going to travel because my husband was still working, and that was it.
Yeah, I think that that's a good story. That the physician came and played the piano rather than got his stethoscope out, right? Which is meaningless, you know. So yeah, Yeah, it's, you have to be, when you have advanced directives, this is a different talk, but I've given this talk before here, but advanced directives are important that, but not only that you have advanced directives, but also that you discuss the directives with your family. And that you pick the right place to go if you need to go as an inpatient somewhere. Because some places don't seem to pay as much attention to those as other places.
So John, could you elaborate on that here in Chicago in terms of, you're talking about specific?
I'd rather not.
Okay, all right.
Other than saying that I think the Catholic Church has some issues with
Okay. All right, that's helpful.
not providing care right to the end of life, care that seems to be more than needed or wanted near the end of life.
Thank you.
To disperse. Yeah.
So I agree with Dale that you always seem very smiley and upbeat and positive, and through the years being an oncologist and seen some really bad things, and experiencing that, and of course with Nell, like, were there tangible things that, did you get depressed? I would say that, or really feeling down or helpless, or did you have tangible ways of sort of, bringing yourself up so that you could continue with your work?
Coping, yeah, coping.
Coping,
Yeah,
like
What did you do to cope?
Yeah, well, everybody copes differently, I
Yeah.
think, about this, but I always found the joy, or the good things about my job. My job was to cure cancer. Didn't always work out. But I didn't get depressed. There was, as long as I did the things that I thought were necessary or the right things to do, that I didn't make a mistake, or whatever, that was okay. And I could then move on to other things that I needed to do to help the patient, and treating them with respect, dignity, listening to them as an act of faith. Those are the things that I never got really depressed unless I did something that I thought injured the patient or was detrimental to their care. That bothered me a lot.
Did you get any attention from your peers? John, you spend too much time with your patients.
No. No. There's no such thing as spending too much time, but as long as your RVUs are okay. Yeah, RVUs, that's your work units that they count now. That's how they determine what your salary is, and whether you're doing a good job is how much RVUs means billing.
Yes.
But they're basically work units, relative value units, yes. So, yes, so there's that. And you had to make certain that that occurred, or, the organization didn't like it. Yeah. But no one specifically said, you're spending too much time with your patients. They said, I was seeing too many patients. They said that because the clinics were out of control, I just kept adding people on, And the patient's sick, they want to be seen. Okay, come on in, It's so that there were about twice as many patients that were supposed to be in the clinic. So it was just, and people waited. They didn't like it, but they understood, because they knew if they called and they wanted to be seen right away, they'd be, they were happy about it. So, yeah.
Okay.
Good. All right. Thanks for coming.
There will be, some of you will be asked to share in the future, so I thank John for opening the door for all of us. I want to tell you about next week in adult ed. The program concerns flight from the nest. There will be a few members of the church, adults and children, from families where the children have recently left, maybe to go to school, maybe to start a career. I don't know, maybe there'll be somebody, the kids came back home, I'm not sure. But the families who will be here next Sunday to participate in this discussion are the Lonzo, Pollock, Raduca, and Shamhart families. So we'll see you next Sunday. Thank you. Yes?
In response to that, there's a lot of people around my age who are in that demographic, and they're like, I think there's something next Sunday about empty nesting, but it's phrased strangely. So you might want to throw out in a messenger
It's an
bell
empty nesting.
that's about empty nesting.
Oh,
They-
okay.
I think it's a
So,
clever title that people.
I didn't come up with this one. You're right. Sometimes you just have to you have to use the most common
Right, so
language.
you
It's
might
empty
have to
nest.
throw something out there.
Flight from nest
Flight from nest.
is confused, is ambiguous.
Yeah.
Yes, I think we're figuring it out.
Thank you very much.
So you might just want to be bold, clear explanation, because I think it would attract a certain demographic.
Yeah, I agree.
Thank you. Well, I will tell you, it was the conscious intention of some people on the adult ed team to try to make sure we have programming that is applicable to people who are still raising their children.
Can
So-
some of us,
Right?
some of us who don't have kids, because my niece is facing this. She has 3 daughters. They're all at various levels. They're all going to be leaving next year because they're all applying to different levels of college. And she really needs to hear this, but she lives in California. So, I give her some advice.
All right, thank you very much.